Okay, welcome to Tanya Inside Out Tafshin Pei Vav at G4. Last week we went through chapter 36, although we digressed, but like it usually happens, we actually ended up explaining the chapter. So this week we'll try and do chapter 27, which is basically, it's the longest chapter in Tanya. Sorry, not 27, 37. Longest chapter in Tanya. And it doesn't seem as, it's not as dense as it might feel like other chapters are. But the end of the chapter, he quite clearly, in regards to Tanya, which isn't always that doesn't mean very clearly, he explains the difference between learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. What's the difference in the effect between learning Torah and doing mitzvahs? Which is greater, yeah? And which is, we'll explain. We'll explain without getting into it. As we ask questions, we'll start explaining it. So, see, one of the funny things about Tanya is that a lot of the ideas seem kind of elementary when we mention them, but that's only because of Sefer Tanya. A lot of these ideas that we've become really familiar with, they're just part of the way we understand Yiddishkeit, were explained clearly in Tanya for the first time. So the first thing that you really need to understand is that this world, how does it work? Like, what's the point? What are we actually doing when we do mitzvahs? What's the point of our mitzvahs? And as we said last week, the Baruch Hu wants what we call a dira b'tachtonim. We said you can't ask why. Because there is not that you wouldn't understand, is that the answer to that question is not an understandable. It's not understandable. Just like, why your wife is into whatever she's into, and you can't understand that at all. She can't explain that to you. That's just what she wants. So again, we're talking about him himself, not his mind, which is much well below him himself. The structure that we understand that we call reality, which is really Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, is a description of the Baruch Hu. And we are an absolute perfect microcosm of that. Every human being, Jew or non-Jew, every human being is literally is a diagram. It's a diagram for the whole system of reality. The most accurate diagram you could ever have. That's also man and female together, whatever, but specifically the male form is the ultimate diagram of reality. I mean, that itself is just an amazing, an amazing idea. Like, every human being you see by definition is literally the physical form of the human being, from the hairs on the top of the head and their forehead down to the toenails and the soles of the feet, and everything in between. That's all just explaining to you how everything works. So by Hashem, it's the same thing. So you have, let's start from the outside. It's really annoying. You kind of end up needing to start from the middle. So let's say there's you. You are the, whether you're talking about the very panemius of the system or the top of the system, it's the same. It's the same idea. It just depends what bechina you want to go in. Panemius and Elyon are the same concept. So we'll go from top down. So what you really are is a point of pleasure. Okay, I'm not going to get into that too much right now. And that expresses itself as Ratzon. Ratzon is energy, like a chaotic energy that can't really be used for anything productively. The Ratzon has to get ordered through Seichel. That's when the Seichel comes in. That's when you're conscious. That's when that's when your consciousness and the system merge with each other at the level of Seichel. From Seichel, that energy is taken and ordered and that gives birth to emotions. Okay? Emotions are, in a sense, like not purified. Their emotions are ordered Ratzon. They're the energy of Ratzon, but like I said, Ratzon is just chaotic. It's just atomic energy. You could use it to, fuel a city for Chashmal. You could use it to destroy a city. It's just energy, yeah? When that energy has now been taken and ordered through the Seichel, yeah, now it becomes productive, useful energy. Where are you going to... Now that energy is like you can now run your mazgan, you can run your toaster, you can turn on your light now. Yeah, but before that, it wasn't usable. So the Seichel orders the energy, and now the energy becomes Midas, yeah, which is primarily Ava and Yira. Ava and Yira is just a movement towards, that's Ava, or a repulsion away, that's Yira. I find it easier nowadays. I know everyone, we always speak about Ava and Yira, and the Tanya does for sure, but I heard of Manasseh a few times, and I find it easier to describe talking about Ava and Sina, yeah, love and hate. But you wouldn't, that's like, it helps you understand the Midas better. But because we always talk about the Midas in regards to Hashem, you'd never say I hate Hashem, but there's Yira means I'm in awe of Hashem. I basically means you make yourself smaller and you distance yourself. You move back. So in a positive sense, in a relationship, yeah, that's like having respect for someone, giving them their space, yeah, not smothering them. Meaning you really right now want to sit and talk to this person, but you can see they're not in the mood. So it's only because of your yira for them that you move away and you give them their space. Yira allows the other one to be more and you to be less. Yira makes you small. Ava, on the other hand, doesn't do that. Yeah, if you really love someone but you don't have any respect for them, then you want to talk to them, they don't want to talk to you particularly, yeah, it doesn't matter. Because they're not as real to you as that. Ava is an expansive experience, and Yira is a what's up? Expansive, constricted, something like that. A constricted experience. It makes you smaller. And so when we're talking about Hashem and a relationship, we always talk about Ava and Yira because that makes sense. But to really get the idea of it clear, it makes more sense. The way I see it, it's easier to understand it with love and hate. Those are the two emotions. Because when you say Ava and Yira, now you ask about what about Simcha, what about Tainug, what about Kas, what about... There's all these other things you ask about. If you just talk about love and hate, you don't really have any more questions. That you see, love and hate are two separate, they're two different things. So anyway, the idea is hate, or the on the right side, on the left side of Gevurah, you move away, you step back. Yeah, Ava, you step towards. And now, what does that express itself as? Because emotions don't really live in this world. Emotions live in the world of Yetzirah. So when you have big emotions, what will happen eventually is that there will be some kind of behavior comes from the... That's how it works, yeah? Behavior is an expression of emotion. If you don't have any emotion, there won't be any behavior, okay? So that's the system. It goes oineg, that goes out through Ratzon, that gets ordered via Seichel, that gives birth to Midas, that become expressed through begadim, or behavior, okay? Machshava dibur ma'aseh. And that works exactly the same with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Or I should say, that is the system of the Rebbeinu Shalom, yeah, of reality, and we echo that as well. Yeah, it's not that he's the Moshel, we're the Moshel. So Lemaisa
ultimately expressed through machshava. I mean, as a very physical sense, I would say like dibur or maisa, like screaming, jumping, whatever that silly action may be to express it. What would be like machshava? It's still not a maisa yet, no?
Yeah, so it's not. It's called machshava is a kind of intermediate level. It's already oisius, yeah, but it's not. It's oisius dakas, it's called, meaning it is a behavior.
So you would say that in terms of machshava, that Ratzon came through to fruition 100%, just through machshava?
No. Well, that's a very loaded. It depends depends what you're talking about. But no, the final makabah patish of Ratzon is from the hands, not even the speech. It's like lemaisa. Yeah. But that you could talk about that for a long time. That question. But the point is that I don't want to get too much into the system because there's all these different feedback loops, and it's much more. Sometimes seichel, many times seichel expresses itself directly through machshava without needing midas. It gets much more when you turn up the resolution. It gets much more complicated. We're just giving it very low res. Otherwise, it's just to understand what I'm about to say now. So in regards to us, it's very simple. Yeah. My will to live, by the way, that's what Ratzon is. Ratzon does not mean your will to eat chocolate cake or your will to build a big business it means your will to live at that level. Once it gets channeled through the mind, yeah, which is basically another way of talking about your nature and nurture, yeah, that's what your mind is. Yeah, once that raw desire to live, like in the Amazon jungle, yeah, the guys who live there, they have a desire to live just like we have a desire to live, yeah? But their desire to live translates as how many women do I own, or I don't know if that's a thing. How big is my banana patch? Yeah, how much honey do I have access to? How talented a warrior am I? Yeah, that's that for us. None of those things are relevant. Bichlal. For us, our desire to live, depending. If you're born in LA, yeah, or you're born in Bnei Brak, it also looks very different. Your desire to live, born in LA, would look like a big house, nice car, trophy wife, etc., etc. Whereas if you're born in Bnei Brak, none of those things are worth anything. If you're born in Bnei Brak, it's about how much Torah you know, yeah, what yichus you have. That's life. You understand? It just gets. That's what we mean by gets ordered. Yeah. So your will to live. It's always your will to live. Everything you're doing is your will to live. It's just it's like it's always water, but it depends if you pour it through the blue pipe system, it will look blue. If you pour it through the red pipe system, it will look red. Yeah, that's what the seichel does. So now, in us, your will to live, however it comes out, will create emotions that gets ordered through the will to live gets ordered through the mind, through the seichel, which then will give birth to emotions. So your emotions will be according to your seichel. So like the guy in Africa in the jungle, yeah, his emotions are gonna give him the energy to climb up the tree to get the honey. Yeah, in the Western world, these emotions are gonna give you the energy to go out and build a business or to go out and learn a new trade, whatever it is. Yeah, open up a Facebook page, and then that will become expressed into behavior. You'll go and open up the Facebook page. You'll go and build a business, yeah, etc. So by human beings, it's very easy. It looks very clear, very clean, yeah. Well, what does that look like by Hashem? What's his behavior? What's his emotions? What's his seichel? What's his rotzon? What's his will to live? Yeah. So, a good way of understanding it is that you can look at the picture of the human being. Okay, so we talked about oineg, rotzon, seichel, midas, levushin. Yeah. Think of it like this: you've got the crown. Yeah, the crown is the rotzon. That's more than the mensch. That's above the mensch, and that surrounds the mensch. Yeah, that's your will to live. You can't get rid of that. You can't lose your will to live. Yeah, without getting too involved in that. Yeah, for all intents and purposes, you cannot lose your will to live.
We spoke about it last week that it feels good to live. We don't even understand how good it feels because
we've always been alive. Yeah, and that's why people who have a brush with death always come back with a new chiyus in life. because life is the great life. It's not really it's the greatest pleasure. It's really the only pleasure. Life is really the only pleasure. All the actual pleasures of chocolate and all the other different things that we get pleasure from, yeah, that touches. I've been saying this for years. I still haven't worked out a way to say it. So you say that the chocolate gives you pleasure, yeah? But really, if you want to understand it properly, the way I understand it, is chocolate doesn't give you pleasure. Chocolate touches your pleasure. So chocolate touches your pleasure, yeah? My kid doesn't like chocolate. He likes herring. Herring touches his pleasure because of his nature-nurture, however it works out, yeah? But that's also wrong because it's not your pleasure. You belong to it. The pleasure, you can't call it your pleasure. It doesn't make sense. You belong to the pleasure. That's what you actually are. Your pleasure has a ratzon. It has seichel, midas, and levushin. The you that we're usually referring to happens around the seichel mark, depending on how elevated a person you are. Generally around the seichel mark, yeah? So when you say, I have pleasure, no. You belong to that point of pleasure. Yeah? That's the you. That's the real you. So you don't say that chocolate gives me pleasure. That's completely wrong. But even say chocolate touches my pleasure, that's much better, but it's still not correct. It's pleasure is touched by chocolate through me. That's probably the best way of saying it. You hear what I'm saying? It's a very abstract idea, but it's crazy because it's just so that's what it is. So anyway, so we have the same.
It made like my physical body just feel so very meaningless.
Your physical body's teeny. We were talking about your personality and your seichel being not even you. Yeah. Your physical body is a speck.
Yeah.
What?
Nothing.
So a lot of people actually they're not identified with the seichel, they're identified with the actual goof. That's a complete tragedy. It's less and less tragic as you get higher and higher until you've completely disidentified with all the chalakim, all your external chalakim. That's called a tzaddik. That's.
It just seems very weird to live in your mind and like have such control over like your thoughts. I mean, what you're describing now.
It's not really. See, having control of your thoughts is you need a good exercise regime. Like it's not about you having control over your thoughts so much. It's about training your mind to not work in the way that we don't train our minds. We let our minds just run wild, and then with these stupid devices, it's just gone off the charts what our minds are doing. Yeah, so it's not. You can't really control your mind like that. You can train your mind. You have to have a workout regime, and it's like to train your body. Yeah, you want your body to be healthy. Not only do you need to train and build the muscles, yeah, but you also have to avoid bad foods and sitting around, whatever. Yeah? It's the same with the mind, exactly the same as the mind. So you could actually be identified. You could be really a tzaddik, yeah, but still have quite a noisy mind. You with me? The difference between the tzaddik and the rasha, although I'm assuming most tzaddikim would have quiet minds, yeah. But the ultimate difference between the rasha and the tzaddik is that the rasha would identify with his thinking. He wouldn't know that it's not him thinking. Whereas the tzaddik would be very aware that he's having thoughts, but he's not the thoughts. That's the difference between the tzaddik and primarily the concept of identification. So now it looks like this. You've got the crown around the head, yeah. Then you've got the actual. Then you've got the head, and you've got the soul, yeah. Then you've got the head and the body, and then you've got the garments. That's how we are. That's what we are. There's the inner level. I was going to get into trouble calling it the crown because that. Let's go in this direction right now. There's the inner point of you, yeah. Then you have your. Then you go out, let's say, to your seichel, then to your emotions, and then to your actual garments. Yeah, so that's the moshul is the soul in the goof, and the goof is in the clothes. That's the picture. Yeah. So now by the Rabbeinu Shloim, that's the moshul. What's the nimshul by the Rabbeinu Shloim? Because he doesn't have a goof, it doesn't have clothes, yeah, it doesn't have a soul, whatever you want, it's all this stuff. Anyway, so the moshul's like this, the way I understand it, is he has a soul, yeah, then he has a personality, which is really the seichel. That's the personality, the seichel. Then he has emotions, and he has a body, and he has clothes. The soul, Hashem's soul, so to speak, is him. Let's just call it him. Yeah, his personality is called Torah. His body is called mitzvahs. And his clothes are called Olam Hazeh. The physicality of this world. You with me? If you understand that deeply, that is literally the most profound thing you can ever hear that I know of.
Yeah. It's also it's also a very sad thing for me. For me
saddening.
Because if I'm understanding the thing correctly, if Judaism at large, Jews at large, whatever it is, we're the ones that bring, the Ratzon, Seichel, etc. for Him, for Hashem, through Torah and mitzvahs. If we're not doing that properly, Talmud Torah, Lilmud, Almanas, Lasos, then Him, I don't know how to say these words, but Hashem is just a klutz in the corner.
He's a what?
No, we are.
No, Hashem is a klutz in the corner. We are His Ratzon. Hashem is not expressed. It's nebuch, but
yes,
we put a duck
that's. I would say that Hashem is frustrated. That's called Galus Hashchina. See, Hashem, that's exactly what Galus Hashchina is. What Galus is.
That's crazy.
Galus. That's the thing, is that we're not separate from Him. We're like cells. We're not really like cells in His body in a sense. It depends what you're referring to yourself. You're more like a thread in the fabric of His garment. That's like a bit more accurate, yeah. But it depends how heilig you are. The more heilig you are, if you're more heilig than that, then you're actually like a cell in His body, yeah. And if you're more heilig than that, then you're like an electrical impulse in His mind, yeah. And if you're more holy than that, then you're completely bound up with Him, mamash, yeah. But minastam, especially our bodies, you're a thread in the weave, yeah, of the fabric of His garment. But the concept of galus is when, this is the definition of galus, where I've learned from my Rebbe, is that you can't express yourself. There's a break between who you are and how you express yourself. Person's in galus. That's why prison is the ultimate galus. Why? Because you can't do what you want. You're stuck in prison. You're locked into prison. Yeah. How can you can't do what you want? So galus means that there is a break between who you are and what you do. Between who you are and how you behave. That is galus. When the how you behave is not an accurate reflection of who you are. Yeah. And that's how people will, although that was very like religious language I just used, but that's how people will describe being, in galus, like a guy in active addiction, yeah, whatever addiction it may be. Everybody would refer to that as being in galus. Why? Because he's not behaving. He doesn't even want to behave that way. He's being compelled, so to speak, to behave in a way that isn't a reflection of who he is. So now Hashem, in His ultimate humility, handed over the keys to His behavior to us. That's called His body. That's why the mitzvahs are called the Ivin de Malka, the 613 limbs of the king. The Zohar Kodesh calls the mitzvahs, the limbs of the king. The Torah, it says, see, what's the difference between limbs and... by the Torah, it says, the Torah and Hashem is one. By the mitzvahs, they're called the limbs of the king. Okay? What's the difference? So it's like the difference between your personality and your body. What?
It's like what you were saying before, like the Seichel Ratzon and then to the Beir, to the Maisa, no?
So in the Moshel,
and the mitzvahs would be like the Machshava Dibur Maisa, whereas the Torah
the mitzvah, no, there's a subtle nuance there. The mitzvahs are actually the body of the king. The Maisa mitzvah is now the levush of the king. Meaning the mitzvahs exist before you do the mitzvah.
They're the will of the king.
What?
The personality of the king.
So the personality of the king is what causes the mitzvahs. The personality of the king is the Torah.
So that's why it's
The body of the king is the mitzvahs, but not the actual lulav and esrog at the time and place when I'm shaking it, yeah? Just the concept, so to speak, yeah? That's his body. The clothing is this world. Now that's when they get expression, when he is expressed, when you take a lulav and esrog on Tesvav Tishrei, yeah, and you do the halacha as it is prescribed in Shulchan Aruch, yeah. Now he goes like, and you know that's what it's called. Do you know what that's called, Dave? That's called nachas ruach. Why? What's nachas ruach? What's ruach? Ruach is the
The ruach is the piece of Hashem that's in you.
So in this marshal, you could also say, but in this way, like the Pechina we're talking about now, ruach is emotion. Yeah, that's Olam Yetzirah. That's why it's called the Yetzer Hara, because it's all emotion. Yeah, so ruach is emotion. Yeah, when you have got deep emotions and you can't, or let's say when you've got deep emotions and they get expressed, that's called nachas ruach. Meaning, you have a Coca-Cola can, yeah? You shake up the Coca-Cola can. Now that's like the emotions getting more and more catalyzed, yeah? And you could, imagine if you were the Coca-Cola can, how you would feel, yeah? And then someone opens you and you're like, That is nachas ruach. Nachas ruach is when your emotions get expressed. So Hashem has nachas ruach when we're doing Torah and mitzvahs. You hear? That's his expression. It's not like he's looking at us and going, oh, look at my wonderful kindler. He might also be doing that on one level, yeah? But he's actually like, that's how I want to express myself through Torah and mitzvahs in this world. You with me?
Yes, yeah, okay. Yeah, I have a question.
And if it doesn't happen like that, if there isn't Torah and mitzvahs, that leads to chawan af. The energy gets released in a different way through the nose, and that doesn't look good for us because it always comes back to equilibrium. That causes the tsaras, cause the yidden to fall back into line.
That is autocorrect.
That's the autocorrect. So there's either the emotions have to come out somehow. The question is there going to be a nachas ruach where we do it, or is there going to be a chawan af where he has to do it? But he can't. This is the godless of our Creator. Is he actually kind of put himself in our hands in a sense? Don't get me wrong; it will always come back. The system's rigged, so
it has to have an autocorrect. Otherwise, God would be flatlined if Judaism stopped.
If there wasn't,
God
absolutely, that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
So it is, in a sense, it's like his godless. The ultimate godless of the Creator is the fact that he actually handed over the keys to a nation. He handed over his behavior to a nation called Am Yisrael. That's a crazy thought. But he kind of covered his back in the fact that the system is set up that if we don't do what we're meant to do, we will get brought back by our own free will. So it's still, meaning the system's rigged that we will get schmeist by the Umos Ha'olam, as we're seeing what's happening right now, yeah? It's working on that level, the emotions of the Umos Ha'olam right now. I don't know if you're holding with what's going on in the world, yeah? But just there's Hashem is engineering it right now that the emotions of the Umos Olam neged Am Yisrael at some point. I hope not. But it looks like they're going to explode at some point, and it will be very quick and violent. Like it's not like it's not like a gradual progression most of the time. That the explosion of pent up. It's an explosion of pent up emotion. But anyway, the system is that when we don't do what we're meant to do, Hashem, so to speak, gets stifled. He gets what's a stronger word than stifled?
Annoyed with us.
He what?
Oh yeah.
No, but he gets when Am Yisrael aren't involved in Torah and mitzvahs, he is getting the word in Chassidus is he goes into Galus. That's called Galus Shechina, but he is getting more and more frustrated. That's the word. He is getting more and more frustrated. Yeah, and there's a build-up of that energy. And as Yidden get involved in Torah and mitzvahs, that energy is like released in the correct way. Because he just wants to do Torah and mitzvahs. He wants the world, when we say he wants to do Torah and mitzvahs, that's really the ultimate level of Lishma. Why is it called Lishma? Why not Lishmoi?
What's the difference?
Lishma is feminine. Lishmoi is masculine. You think you should be doing the mitzvah for Hashem's sake.
For him. It's not Lishma, right?
You should call it Lishmoi.
Right, but we're saying it's not true.
But we always say
is.
Lishma. What?
It's for its own purpose. That is what it is. No, you're not doing it for him. It is him.
I'm not sure if I can say that again. I'm not sure.
You're saying because of masculine and feminine?
The mitzvah is feminine. So when you say Lishma, you mean I'm doing it for the sake of the mitzvah. Not Lishmoi, I'm doing the mitzvah for the sake of him. Why? Because I think it was what you just said. The ultimate level of Lishma is when Hashem is getting self-expression through the world. Why does he want the mitzvah? As we said last week, and we keep saying, why does he want the mitzvah? Kacha. There's no answer to that question. No intelligent answer to that question. Just like, why do you want to live? It's exactly that is the moshul. Hashem's relationship to mitzvahs are the nimshul to your relationship to life. Yeah? If you need to write it down. Your relationship to life. There's no reason, there's no intelligent reason why you want to live. You just want to live. Yeah, there's no intelligent reason why he wants mitzvahs. Intelligent reasons flow from his want to have mitzvahs. So now, he wants the mitzvah for its sake, its own sake, not for something that comes from the mitzvah. So we're not doing the mitzvah, the ultimate level of Lishma is not doing the mitzvah for him. It's that you dissolve and he's doing the mitzvah through you.
Oh.
That's what Lishma means. It's mamash right there in the Lashon. You're doing it l'shem mitzvah. Why? For the same reason as he wants the mitzvah. So you've just become a vessel. And now this is a very important point because what people use the word for this bittul. You notice I very, very rarely, if ever, use the word bittul because it's such a confuse, like the word God. It's like you need to know what people mean by that. And it's got such bad baggage attached to it. That bittul doesn't just mean the immediate connotation of bittul is this zombie-like figure who's filled with God. Yeah, if it's in a good way. Yeah, that his body's been filled with God. It means his personality's been filled with God. His personality hasn't gone. Bechlal. It's just that the panemius of his personality is now Elokus. So somebody who's bottle mamush would most likely be the most aggressive personality or the most personality that there is. You with me?
You see those like the Goyim, they have these like spiritual, like they're
The who?
The Goyim.
Yeah.
Like you see during their services, they go into like these trances.
Yeah.
Because of that reason, they're filled with the Spirit of God. They're like you said, they're the most aggressive They're the most out there in this world.
Oh, so okay, I hear what you say. I meant, what I was really meaning is like when you see the real Gedolim and the real Tzaddikim, yeah, they're generally not passive. I mean, it might be they have a passive personality, yeah, but they are the most energized, most fiery person. They are. But they're the most bottle. Why?
Jumpy.
Because,
Yeah.
what?
Like jumpy.
Yeah, they're mamash on fire. Because it's not that their personality has been nisbatel, it's that the panemius of their personality has been nisbatel. The mensch, that's what goes. All the kalim are there. You understand? So it's like instead of you running on like a little bit of kinetic energy that you picked up from whatever, yeah, it's you are now being run on atomic energy straight from the Boina Sholem. So it's the same you, just with huge energy. So it's just it's kind of a side point, but we're kind of used to it now, again, because of Tanya, but Rabbi Tatz brought it to the world, but Manis speaks about it the whole time as well, is the idea, we've said it just now, is that you've got the moshel and the nimshel. Yeah, we always thought that we're the real deal, and when we talk about Hashem's hand and Hashem's eyes and Hashem's heart, etc., yeah, that's the moshel. It's just a moshel. But we know nowadays that really it's the opposite, that Hashem has a real hand and a real heart and real eyes, and we're the moshel. Yeah, we're the image of that. Yeah, that's without image. We're the image of that. This is what a hand would look like. Yeah. We say, what do you mean this is what a hand would look like? This is a hand. No. A hand is a concept. Yeah, if it was to go down through all of the system of reality and get to the lowest level, it ends up looking like this. That's not a hand, yeah? But we're very happy to say, so people who don't know this would scream at you for saying, what do you mean Hashem has a hand? Chas v'shalom, But he has a seichel. You can't say Hashem doesn't have a seichel. It's not like our seichel, but no. Saying that Hashem has a seichel is the exact same thing as saying it has a hand. It's the exact same thing, mamash. It's just because somebody didn't go that little bit further and conceptualize and abstract the verb abstract. That he thinks there's a difference in Hashem having a seichel and Hashem having a hand. Yeah, Hashem doesn't have a seichel. Hashem has a seichel. He isn't a seichel. He has a hand. Yeah, it doesn't look like that. I mean, it would look like this if this is what a hand looks like, but he has a real hand. Now, circling back to what we were saying now, that means that when we do mitzvahs in this world, that is like Hashem finally being able to move in the way that he wants to move. You could think of it as like he wants to dance a certain kind of dance, yeah? But because he's wearing very tight clothes, yeah? Well, let's start talking about Hashem. A guy wants to do a certain kind of dance, yeah, in the moshel. Yeah, I don't know. All I can think of is tango, but that's not very kosher, is it? Some kind of dance for a single person, yeah? There's a jig. He wants to do an Irish jig, yeah? And the clothes... The clothes that he's wearing are too tight, so he's very constricted in his movement, yeah? That's very frustrating. And it could be that the clothes will rip or whatever, or whatever will happen. When he's now got loose clothes or clothes that are matim for the Irish jig, whatever that would look like, yeah? Now he can dance around and he's feeling great. That's what he wants to do. He wants to dance. He wants to dance the jig, now he's dancing the jig. So now that's the moshel for what happens when we do Torah mitzvahs in this world. Is until we were doing Torah mitzvahs, Hashem was wanting, so to speak, to do a certain dance, and the clothing was being rebellious and, a better word than that, was being rebellious and unresponsive and constricting. So he's kind of stuck, yeah? As we start doing Torah mitzvahs, now he's happy, so to speak, doing that's what he wants. Now, why is that? That is the whole system becoming unified. There's you, yeah, which we said is this abstract point of pleasure. What does that mean? What does that look like? Where is it? It's not anywhere. It doesn't take up any space. It's so ethereal. It's not even, you can't even say ethereal, because that's ethereal. It's got so no mamasha. It's so nothing, so no thing. You can't talk about it, yeah? But that's what you are. You're that point of pleasure. Now, when you see me, yesterday, for example, I bought a sefer, yeah, a 17-volume set of Midrash from the art school. That's my next year's project, yeah. That was a big pleasure for me. Okay, we like to buy, I like to have book, to buy a book is a nice thing for a Jewish guy, yeah. And I bought 17 mamish, but it's like geschmack, It's like the equivalent of a guy in LA getting a Bugatti, you get your little this one or that one, but then you get a 17 set of art school beautiful Sfarim, that's like the Bugatti of, the Havdil of Sfarim. But that was a real expression of my pleasure. That gave me pleasure. Okay, I know that's wrong, yeah? That touched my pleasure a bit better. Pleasure got touched through me buying that book, yeah? Now, I didn't get it yet, but then when I get the book, yeah, and I put it on my bookshelf, yeah? Or even better, I take it out and I start learning it. Now, you realise that is a complete connection now from the most utter abstraction to the absolute concrete. It's all become one. And the only reason why it looks like loads of levels is because you've got fleishik ticket eyes and you're used to compartmentalizing stuff. But in reality, what you're seeing is an absolute unification of the highest level to the lowest level. Hashem's into that.
So,
why? I know.
So how do you explain Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam?
Okay,
it's like
well,
you're
let me ask
close,
you.
but you missed the boat.
But what?
With Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, it's like you're almost there.
So they got together by in the attic of Hanania, was it? And they asked the question, the Tanoim asked the question, what's bigger, Torah or mitzvahs? And they said this, they said that, and then they all were musking on the final answer. Torah's bigger because it brings you to Maisa Mitzvah, which is the most unbelievable way of saying it. Torah's bigger because it brings you to the Maisa Mitzvah. And this is exactly the point of this chapter. What?
It brings you to the bigger thing.
So what's bigger?
Yeah.
Torah or mitzvahs? Torah's bigger because it brings you to Maisa.
It's in the progression.
What?
It's an orderly progression of things, but
The Maisa Mitzvah is the
like you
Ikka. The
almost
Torah
missed
is
it. It's limud amanas lasos.
absolutely,
That's what it is.
absolutely. That's a big mistake, I think, in our generation that big people talk about. Only smaller people don't think it's a mistake. From my research, that this insane obsession with the Pilpul and Talmud Bavli, as opposed to actually working out halacha, yeah, and the kind of casting away of the kitzur svarim of the halacha that just make things very simple and whatever. I gave to hocha to a guy yesterday. I just put on this, the program we're running, yeah, and we had posters all over the town, and it said 110% money back guarantee. Okay, and we hold by that. I'll give 110%. But we actually gave it to somebody yesterday. 110% money back guarantee. So this guy at the end of shul says, "Are you Rabbi Diamond?" So he says, I'm in the collar, and we were discussing the whole Indian of if you can do this 110% money back guarantee, because it's like a shayla of ribis, and I'm listening to him talk, and I'm as he's talking more, he seems like a knowledgeable guy. He says, you have to make sure that you make an absolute... I said, look, I'm giving an extra 10% because I wasted the guy's time. So I'm giving him 10%. He says, yeah, but you have to make sure that you didn't... And I'm listening to the talk. I'm like, listen, man, you're just kvetching for the sake of good. There's nothing wrong with this, bichlal. he kind of I said, and then came to Tochacha. I said to him, the avoid of Talmud Torah is to be mevareh the halacha, not to make it more complicated and more, like, it happens a lot when you speak to a poisek, yeah? He'll tell you, a real godlin Torah will say it's like this. Okay, there's another opinion, but this is what we do, and this is it, yeah? Ask a guy, a regular avrich in yeshiva, yeah, in kollel, what the halacha is on the inyan that he's been learning be'iyan for the past 2 months, and he will say to you, not so pasha. It's not so pasha. Look, I hear that, yeah, but then you have to take, there's the run as well, yeah, and then there's the riff. I don't know. Not so pasha. They did the opposite thing. You're meant to be mavaya, not make it more, you're meant to get through and be mavaya, like the Rambam did, mamash. The Rambam, I'm about to make a sim on the Rambam, B'ezrat Hashem. And the amount of times he says, I'm not sure, I mean, I could probably count them on my 10 fingers in the Mishnah Torah. Mishnah Torah is the hugest thing in the world, yeah? I'm saying literally about maybe 10 times in the whole thing, he says, I don't know. Right? But the exactly what you're saying is the whole point of the Torah is the personality, yeah? The mitzvahs are the goof, but that's still abstract. He wants not just from him to his goof, he wants from him specifically to his clothes, to his garments, which is the physicality of this world. This is the physicality of Olam. This is, for example, without a cow, yeah, you can't do tefillin. How does tefillin get expressed without a cow? There is no tefillin without cow. It's really the truth is the other way around. It's really the reason why there's cows is because of tefillin. Yeah, but the cow doesn't know about that. And if you leave it to your own devices, you're not going to draft the cow into his purpose in this world, which is to be turned into tefillin. So what's the cow? The cow is his garments. It's something separate from him. You could wear other people's garments. You can take your garments off and put them someplace else. Your garment, this is the perfect mashal, by the way. You can learn amazing things from what garments actually are. Made of infinite threads. You can take them on, take them off. They express who you are. They can conceal who you are. You can borrow people's garments. You can steal people's garments, yeah, etc. So the physical world is his garments that at this point right now are not accurately representing him. That's called gullus. It's not really that we're in gullus. You could say it like that, yeah? Us in gullus means he's in gullus. When we say Am Yisrael's in gullus, that means, the Pashto way of saying is we're not in Eretz Yisrael, yeah? But it means we're not able to do Torah and mitzvahs. Eretz Yisrael is a mashal for not all to. There's a machlokes rishonim if bichlal you're chayiv in Torah and mitzvahs outside of Eretz Yisrael. Machlokes rishonim, we say that you are, but is it the Ramban who says that? You remember?
Ramban.
The Ramban who says that mitzvahs aren't. They're not chiyuv. They're not chiyuv device outside Israel.
I think it's the practice outside of Israel.
So yeah, I think it is the Ramban. Either way, it's a machlokes. So the whole point is that gullus by Yidden means that we're not doing Torah mitzvahs. We're not able to do Torah mitzvahs. That was Mitzrayim. But that's just like a little bit of, that's just looking at the story from our little lens. When you zoom out and you look at the big picture, that means Hashem's in gullus. Because he's not being able to express himself. That's the case. So that's the mitzvah. That's the milah of the mitzvah, the Maisa mitzvah, like you said, over the Limud Torah. But you can't get to the Maisa mitzvah without the Limud Torah. You can't make up the mitzvah. You need to read what the mitzvah is, or hear from your Rebbe what the mitzvah is, the specific dimensions of the mitzvah in time, space, energy, matter. Those when they all convalesce in a certain specific point, yeah, which is delineated in the. You could look at the Shulchan Aruch and a really real way of looking at the Shulchan Aruch is looking at, it's called table as well, is looking at it as a table plotting the coordinates of all of the time, space, energy, matter of this world. You hear that? Every mitzvah is a coordinate in time, space, energy, matter. Yeah? Matzah. Yeah? The time is Tesvav Nissan. Yeah? The place is, it's not, since the base of Mikdash was destroyed, place has become much more that's one thing in Dallas. Then you've got the energy, which means the Jew has to eat the matzah, yeah, and the matter is the actual the matzah itself, yeah. So now if you flick out any one of them, yeah, so you change the time, yeah, to sometime in Tishrei, yeah, no mitzvah, yeah. Again, place isn't so connected. Change the energy, take out Yiddish energy for Goyish energy, no mitzvah. Take out the chomer, the matzah, and change it with rice bread or with grass, no mitzvah. So what is the Shulchan Aruch really on that level? The Shulchan Aruch is plotting the coordinates, the time, space, energy coordinates of the whole Torah.
So would it be appropriate to say that if we don't do a mitzvah properly, we're doing avodah zarah? I mean, I'm half joking.
What do you mean not doing it? What does that mean not properly?
Let's say you eat chametz matzah, whatever you're trying to do, but
okay.
you're missing your component.
It's not avodah zarah. It's just the same as everything else.
Whatever. It's nothing.
You could call it avodah zarah in that it's not avodah Hashem, which is what avodah zarah means. You're not doing avodah Hashem. It has to be in His coordinate. It's like, just a very simple moshe. You go to a restaurant and you order something, and the guy brings you the wrong order, and you say to him, I ordered this, and he said, "Listen, I'm gonna bring you what I would like to bring you." That's not avodah. That's not service. Service means you do what the other wants. So Hashem created that a very specific, delineated, formula, so to speak, for what He wants. That's called Torah mitzvahs. That is called the mitzvah. That is an expression of the Torah. So really, the Torah is the inner dimension of the mitzvah. The Torah is His personality. You with me? That's really what's kind of, in a sense, motivating the mitzvah. The Ma'aseh mitzvah, just like the personality energizes the goof, and the goof moves the clothes, that's how it is again. That the Torah, that's why we say that Kudsha Baruch Hu Raisa Kul Echad, Hashem and His Torah is one. But the mitzvahs are called the limbs of the king. They're further from Hashem than the actual, than the Torah itself, yeah? Now, so the Mila, and this is really what chapter 37 is about, the Mila, which is the ultimate Mila of mitzvahs maisius over Torah. By the way, when somebody says to you, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, which I know people throw around a lot, it's just that needs such a lot of perish. That is such a loaded statement. That the actual halacha is mitzvah she'er sha'ala is alidei acherim, is you are potter from Talmud Torah. The example is a mace mitzvah. Yeah, you're learning Torah. There's a mace mitzvah, yeah, no one else can do it, or to make it more. Is your mitzvah saying Kriya Shema can't be done by somebody else. So you have to stop Talmud Torah for a Kriya Shema. You have to stop Talmud Torah for a mitzvah that only you can do, yeah? Which doesn't make sense when you're coming from the paradigm of Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Talmud Torah should trump every mitzvah, but the halakha is not like that. And Masha Ein Kain, Oisik b'mitzvah patam in a mitzvah. It's the opposite. When you're involved in a mitzvah, you're potter for a mitzvah. So that's a very important thing to mention when someone says Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Well, then what about these two halachas, which are real hard? That's not halacha. That's a maimah. Yeah, the halacha is that if you're involved in Talmud Torah and there's a mitzvah that can't be done by another, you are potter from the Talmud Torah. And contrary, even more so, yeah. If you are involved in a mitzvah, you're potter from another mitzvah. You don't need to be involved in another mitzvah. That's why the chassan on the chassan, the beginning of bracha says that the chassan doesn't have to say Kriya Shema, leo yom chupasoi, yeah, leo chupasoi. You don't have to say Kriya Shema. because you're asuk in the mitzvah, purivuya, whatever it is that we don't pass. You should still say Priya Shema, yeah, but just to understand, yeah. And this is why what we're saying here, because what does Hashem really want? Is he wants a dir b'tachtonim in this lowest world, which means in the fabric. This table is not enough that there's a table. This table needs to be used to learn Torah from. It needs to be used to daven from. It needs to be used to have Suda Shabbos on. That's the point of the table. Just like the cow. The cow is there to be used for tefillin. The cow is there to be used for Suda Shabbos and Yom Tov. The cow is there to make cheesecake for Shavuos, v'chulei, and everything else that cows do, yeah? So now, that's the milah of mitzvahs over Torah, which is an infinite milah. That is why mitzvahs are more than Torah. Yeah, that's how it ends up the chapter here. Yeah, and why is the ultimate mitzvah called mitzvah tzedakah? And he says in the Talmud Yushalmi, they call ha-mitzvah, when it says mitzvah, it's talking about tzedakah. Why?
Because it's both.
Because what?
It's both.
It's what?
Both. Torah and mitzvah. No.
So that's what he says.
It itself is a mitzvah on its own. It's being mative toward someone else.
No, it doesn't say like
So
that.
it's a little bit of a plus.
It could. There's lots of that's lovely what you said. But what the Tanya says here, according to the way we're talking about it right now, it depends how you set the system, how you want to talk about it. The way the Tanya says that we understand is because mitzvah tzedakah comes from 10% of the ikka mitzvah is ma'aser, yeah, which comes from 10% of the money that you earn in parnasa.
Right.
And this is another mistake of our world that we live in, is this what's the word? This distaste for working, for actually earning money. It's like, it's kind of, b'diavad. Yeah? The tzedakah is taking a portion of the money that you earn, yeah?
Right.
What do you do? You work? What do you do?
Counting?
Accounting. So when you account, yeah, you have your own business, you work for someone,
Yeah.
in your house, you go to an office.
No, out of home.
You have an office.
Out of home. I work
Out of home.
Yeah.
So you have your computer, you have all the chashmal, yeah, you're sitting there, you're using your mind, you're using your speech, you're using your action, yeah? Torah doesn't use action. Torah uses your mind and your speech, and there is this inyan of akimas society is like a ma'aser, yeah, where you move your lips is like a ma'aser, but it's not like the ma'aser of tefillin or the ma'aser of lulav esrog of. So that is why it's called. Why tzedakah is called mitzvah, because tzedakah is the mitzvah that drafts the most amount of stuff of this world into avodas Hashem. You understand that? Tefillin, how much does tefillin draft? How much does Hashem come into the world through mitzvah tefillin? Quite a lot, yeah. There's the sun that causes the grass to grow, yeah, and there's all the and then there's the cow, yeah, and then there's the farmer who. Whatever, or the guy who shechs the cow, and then there's the guy who makes the batim and v'chulei, yeah? Then you put on the tefillin and all that goes up. All of that process that is now crystallized in the bottom of the tefillin, yeah? And when you do the ma'aser, all of that gets connected to mitzvah and it all goes back to Hashem, yeah? Or he comes down here, either way. But when you work, think about how much more of the world you interact with through general working. 8 hours a day, especially now with the internet and with everyone's online and every little bit of your computer comes from the ground from all over the world. Yeah, think of how much of the world is being drafted now in these final days with every little act you do, with all the the infinite electronic digital structure behind everything, and where it's all where your data is stored when you watch a video on YouTube. You know where it is? No, nor does anybody else. It could be anywhere, literally anywhere. Like it's every, and it could be in multiple. You know how torrents work? You know what torrents are? You know what tolerance are?
Everyone's using it, and the more people that use it, the stronger it is.
More
Yeah, basic.
feeds
Tolerance are the way you like download anything online. Yeah? If you want any movie for free, you go to a torrent site and you click it.
No,
Torrents, you find 2 seconds like that. Yeah? Anything for free you get on torrents. Yeah? Anything. And what it is it's basically everyone who's gotten together, who's gotten their hands on this film or that film or this music or this whatever, yeah, all over the world, yeah, millions and millions and millions of people, and you click, and it downloads the information. It could be downloading the information from 100 different locations. A little bit from this guy's computer, a little bit from this guy's computer, a little bit from this guy's computer, a little bit from this. So you realise when you download a movie, that movie existed on 100 hard drives or more.
on every continent.
All over the world, in every time
everywhere.
zone, like we have no idea now what kind of things. And now when you're working, like I'm doing this, I just did this. I'm putting on this program right now, yeah. And I always think about, like, I've been learning about online marketing for the past 20 years, yeah. I've really spent a lot of time learning about it. And I got this book. I've read a lot of books. There's one book called Cashvertising, yeah. Cashvertising. I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote it, yeah. It was unbelievable, yeah. I went through that book a bunch of times. I memorized everything. It was just, it was like gold. Page after page after page of pure gold of how to sell stuff online, yeah. And now now it's all just second nature. I just remember, there's scarcity, and then there's the testimonials, and then there's the funnel down, and you need the hook at the beginning, and there's a whole science, yeah. And so we just did this we launched this program a couple of weeks ago. The first class was last Sunday. This Sunday just gone, and it was really successful, wildly successful. It brought loads of people. And I know Hashem does everything, okay, we say that. But he did it through my Kalim. And my Kalim, I basically, there's a lot more to it than this, but just on a similar, I got from this guy, I have no idea who he is, where he is, yeah? You realise that this is, and then that all ends up as like, a lot of people feel better in their lives, they end up serving Hashem better, B'ezrat Hashem. I put food on my table that we use for Shabbos and for Torah mitzvahs, etc., yeah? So I thought about this guy, I don't remember his name, yeah? I thought about this guy so many times, that this guy is having such an aliyah right now because of the fact that some little Jew in Israel opened his book and took it seriously. And now think about what this guy is.
It could have been his life's work.
Yeah, this guy, this book.
30 years of research.
Exactly. And now where did all that come from? Yeah. And then each of these little guys, and you think about that's what's happening in this final generation. Is it's all going back to Avodah Shalom. And that's why tzedakah is called mitzvah stam, because your tzedakah is 8 hours of yagiyah, and nowadays it's much more than the old days. In the old days it was, schlepping water or chopping wood or opening up your shop, although the shop had more, commerce had more. But nowadays, you've probably got clients, where are your clients? All over the world, yeah?
US.
Oh, it's a new...
So banking has to be a really... Banking,
huge
big part of it, because you're getting a blood source to everything.
If what's that again?
Banking it has that bechina of being part of everything.
It's everything. It's everywhere. The money. It's the same thing. It's really with everything.
Right.
Banking, but the internet is now what's kind of brought all of the. It's not stum. And what's.
That's Talmud can add Kulam also, because Talmud has that idea also. We're right now talking Torah. I'm going to go home. Maybe I'll say something to my wife that I heard about.
For sure. Everything does this. Everything does this, 100%. But on the most profound level, the most is tzedakah. Because tzedakah is a portion of your panasa, your avodah, your avodas panasa. And by definition, avodas panasa nearly always includes a huge amount, like 8 hours of thought, speech, and action every day. If you're taking it easy nowadays, people work much more than that as well. So that's the milah of Torah, of mitzvahs over Torah, and that's an infinite milah, and that puts mitzvahs, in a different category lagamrei to everything to Torah, because that's without the ma'aseh mitzvah, Hashem doesn't get it needs to express itself into Torah. But like we said, you don't, so into the world, into mitzvah, yeah? Into the world, really, through the mitzvah. Without the mitzvah, the energy gets stuck at Torah. But without the Torah, there's no mitzvah. So that's what Chazal said, that it's the Torah is greater because it brings to Maisa. So the first stage is Torah. You have to learn how to do the mitzvah. Once you've learned how to do the mitzvah, now you have to do the mitzvah. And that's why it's so important to learn how to do the mitzvah as opposed to learn how to learn Gemara. That's what people say.
When you said learn Gemara, because you went to this language I really liked, which was the talk about Torah Sheba'al Peh, how it can't be written down.
Yeah.
So I think the whole Gemara thing is really what makes your DNA into somebody who could learn Torah Sheba'al Peh. You have that. You turn into a kli to be able to learn davar mitoch davar and to be able to figure things out like that.
Maybe I don't know. That's a very loaded question.
When you start to think like the Chachamim.
Maybe I don't know.
Saying over
The Chachamim also wrote. Yeah, they also wrote the Midrashim. They also wrote the Zohar Kodesh. They also wrote all the Agadatas in the Talmud Bavli. They also wrote the Shalmi. They wrote all the. There's a lot of Chazal thought in. Chazal thought in a way that they needed to think in. If they were here and they needed to think in this way, they'd think in this way. If they were here, then to say that the Talmud Bavli, I've heard people say this many times, I'm learning how Hashem thinks. That's a ridiculous statement. That is a completely wrong statement. Yeah, Hashem can think in any way he wants. He doesn't think in a certain way.
We're seeing how the Chachamim interact with each other, how they discuss, how they talk to each other.
That's what I was trying to say. Chachamim thought in the most effective way to think. But to say they only thought in the derech of Talmud Bavli is not correct. They thought in all different kinds of ways. When they had to get mystical, they thought in a mystical way. When they had to get, Lemaisa, they spoke in Mishnayos and Psak Halacha. When they had to understand the point of whatever, they had to understand a certain case, then they would talk in the Lashon of the Bavli. It's not, you can't say, I'm just saying that thinking is, there's no, the way I understand it.
You always have camps that every camp has their pillar, and so they shoot out a lot of that, and a chacham is supposed to take from all these different pillars and to put it all together.
A person who has a hammer thinks everything's a nail. That's what you're saying.
So you have
it's like a surgeon is always telling you to have surgery. Yeah, why not? What about homeopathic? What about changing your diet? Let's do surgery.
A good doctor.
A good doctor he understands everything.
The whole thing.
So I learned that by photography. Yeah, I got to a very, very high level in photography, and on a world I'm just trying to say I've got the ability to say this now. I teach hundreds of people photography. Yeah, is that as I look at my journey now, I understand basically there's not much more to understand about photography than what I understand. I'm not talking about all the computer imaging and stuff like that, but actual photography, there's not much more for me to know in photography. And that sounds very arrogant, but I'm just trying to... So now, when you first learn about Flash...
It's not arrogant, you just say it. It's not arrogant, you're just stating what...
So it sounds... When you learn how to use Flash at the beginning, when I first discovered Flash, it was like I would only ever use Flash. As I got bigger and bigger in photography, I realised there's a time and a place for everything. And it only comes from a lot of experience where you, like just what we were saying, where it's like everybody who's into a certain thing says you do it like this. But the master who knows the whole thing, so that's why in regards to thinking, there's endless ways to think. Endless ways to think. Just on the most basic level, there's right brain, left brain thinking. So anyway, the point is though that...
Your photography, you started out probably in a place, not for sure, I don't know for sure, but you probably went to a standard photography lessons or whatever school, and you got some type of base there. Where if you go back there now, they might be still saying you might say except for in this situation you don't do like this, and in this situation.
So now to say that about Talmud Bavli, that's the foundation.
And there's a certain foundation to it that it has. Then the Gemara itself says that it has a mixture of everything in there.
It's a very complicated. I don't know the answer to your question. My answer is probably a little controversial as well. If I was pushed to answer it, but I don't know. But just as an interesting thing as you were saying that is I've looked this up. You can look this up online. they've done a few research projects into this. How do photographers feel about their own photography? How do they rate? Excuse me. Do they rate their photography as excellent, mediocre, rubbish, etc.? Yeah. So when you look at the bell curve, they have beginners over here on the left side, and they have expert masters on the right side. What do you think the curve looks like? You would probably think it looks like that, yeah? It actually looks like this.
I would have guessed that, actually.
Down, and then at the end it goes up a little bit. The people who know the least, who are the worst, think they're the best. Because they've got such a constricted mindset. When this is the issue.
You get humble, and then
They get
when
more
you're a real
humble.
pro. Yeah, then you get humble, and then when you're a real pro,
Then you
know what
exactly
you are.
yeah, and you know there's other people who are better than you, so you don't feel like the best. But these people aren't even in the equation. That's how it works. But it's also that this is the issue: is when you think you have a broad understanding of what the Torah is, but in fact you don't. For example, if in a person's mind there's Talmud Bavli, and then okay, there's a bunch of other stuff also, but come on, it's Talmud Bavli. Well, now you realise how dangerous that is, because you're really like looking at it's not a teeny bit of the Torah, but it's not the Roiv of the Torah. You've got all of Tanakh, you've got all of the Midrashim, and the Agadas also aren't usually included in when we talk about Talmud Bavli. We get through them quite quickly because it's all about just the pilpul. Yeah, and then you've got all the Zoyas and all the Kisvei Ari and all the Rishonim and there's so much Torah. Yeah, but when you think that it's just that, then you have to be. But the real problem is when you think that it's just that. It's one thing just being involved in that, but when you're just involved in that. And your opinion of everything else is that it's, cute, but it's not, or you might even pay it lip service, but you don't really. We have a chiyuv to learn kol Torah kuloi. We have a chiyuv to learn kol Torah kuloi. Mamash a chiyuv.
The way to look at it is like you look at any bookshelf at any shul or base matters. Like Bavli literally only takes up one shelf.
Yeah.
Like
it depends how many sets there are and how many.
Yeah.
But
there's such loads more.
It's such a scare. It's such a mistake.
There's all these things in Bavli.
Everything is in Bavli. You're right. Everything's in Bavli, but it's just like everything's also in Pirkei
You're not
Avos.
going to sow through that avenue.
Exactly, that's the point.
You're not going through it through a Tosfos. It's not happening.
Even if you master Talmud Bavli, then you've gone probably through all of the Torah as well. Also, I'm just saying when we learn about the certain sugyas that we learn and we put everything into them, but at the expense of getting a broader picture of Torah, it's you have to just ask that question. We don't ask that question in yeshivas, but that's a valid question to ask.
Our question based on majority of the share, you're saying that. You have 613 mitzvahs, and they're all critical. Right? The system's incomplete without any single one of them.
100%.
How do you make sense of mitzvahs that are not knowing Bizman Hazeh or will only come into play Yimos of Mashiach? It's like like who you punishing? I don't mean to say punishing, but
why do we have to go through this lack?
Why you keeping it away from us?
Also, if it's oines, you're part of from the mitzvah anyway. So it's.
But there's a lot of there's no mitzvah for whatever reason. There's a host of other mitzvahs.
No, but firstly, we're talking about the whole of Klal Yisrael as one being. So there's mitzvahs.
Kohanim, so that's Klal Yisrael. So they have my back, I have their back.
B'shas Galus, where there's no base of Mikdash, we're not in Eretz Yisrael, so to speak. Yeah. How does that work out with the Shem's expression?
Or you pick the cows, right? So I'll pick pigs. I don't need 100,000 species to tell me that something is tummy. Like most of Mashiach, lots of love or whatever. Pig is gonna be kosher. Make it kosher now. Like let the tikkun and the perfection. Why are mitzvahs being blocked off for us? What's
I don't know.
Who's that serving? We're here to serve. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
Why you?
If Hashem's created the mitzvahs, that mitzvah can't be performed. Like all the mitzvahs of korbanos, at the time there's no bamas now. So in the korbanos in the Beis Hamikdash we're not. So we fulfill them through through davening and through learning about the mitzvahs. That's another way that they say maybe an answer to your question, but I don't know the answer to your question.
So you're saying that for right now in today's day and age, we're able to reach a shleimus and a tikkun in the entire Klal Yisrael without the necessity of whatever it is we're lacking.
Well, it's like chicken egg, isn't it? Which one? What does what like that?
Saying we're trying to reach something. We're working towards some goal. I'm saying you only gave me the bat. You didn't give me the glove and the ball or like the goal. Like you only gave me some of the tools.
Yeah.
Oh, so in regards to just you're saying because there are certain mitzvahs we can't do. Because there are certain mitzvahs we can't do, that means that that Hashem can't have complete expression.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, what is the purpose of that? Why are you blocking it off?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. Those mitzvahs will, like we said, firstly, through learning about the mitzvahs, that's considered like doing them in a sense. But it's not really. It's not like what we've been saying here. I don't know, but he's taken these mitzvahs away from us. But our avodah will finally bring back the state of tikkun, where those mitzvahs will once again be available for us. Maybe they're considered like less vital limbs of the king. I don't know. And through having, I'm just freestyling here. Through a healthy body, you get access to other parts of the body that you didn't know about. Like when I made a wedding, I had strings pulled inside me for my oldest child. I had emotional muscles stretched that I didn't know existed. I didn't know there were these kinds of tests that I went through making this wedding. I didn't realize these kinds of emotional tests exist. I'm just like joking around. I'm just saying that I don't know that how eventually it will get to the point, and it will get to the point where all the mitzvahs are being done, yeah, or not being done. Again, also you have to ask the question about the mitzvahs lo saseh, because you don't do anything. That's not, so that doesn't give him expression. That blocks his expression when you do them.
So that would be, you could say, Midas Hayira. That was the asiyas of the lo saseh.
Well, that's how you don't do lo saseh. But his expression, he doesn't express himself through not doing mitzvah, through not doing aveiras. It would be an inaccurate expression to do aveiras. So it's much more complicated. But
not something we said that if we look at the way the Torah progressed, we see that it's a Rashi he wrote on the Tanakh and on Talmud Bavli. Talmud Yerushalmi didn't write on. We see throughout the generations what was considered a foundation of people's Torah study.
Yeah.
Not to say that the Musar Sfarim and the Hasidic Sfarim and all the Kabbalah is its own in a certain way. Not really its own, but it has its own program kind of.
But that's the point. It's not.
It's not really. It's not exactly. Really. There was a time when it was hidden.
Yeah, and it became revealed. Exactly. Yeah.
But don't we also have to look at that and say there is this seems to be a certain foundation of the way the Jews learn Torah.
For sure. That's Talmud Bavli, and that's the Masorah that we have. The Yeshivish Masorah is to learn Talmud Bavli Kima exclusively. Right. To the point in Europe there were places that didn't learn Shnei Mikveh Echad Targum because they felt that it wasn't that's very difficult to deal with, yeah. When the most basic mitzvah of Talmud Torah is Shnei Mikveh Echad Targum. That's the funny thing. And again, we're not talking about really the limit of Talmud Bavli. We're talking about this very specific kind of yeshivish learning, which is, again, it's
because sometimes we get caught up in the thing being in the thing being the God. I mean, we being the God.
Oh, yeah,
that happens in everything.
Yeah,
in everything in the world.
So what I just want to finish on right now is that
I don't attack the actual Talmud. God forbid the Talmud Bavli.
Yeah, so we're not. Again, that's the point. We're not talking about Torah. We're talking about, well, is it Torah? Is it Torah to be going like this with your thumb? I heard a big man one time call that bittul Torah. The limud, like the way, some people, not everyone, the way that it can kind of become in a yeshiva, he called that bittul Torah. He called it bittul Torah. I wouldn't say, I don't know that, but so the mind.
Everybody becomes a general. Some people are just privates. Some people are privates their whole life, or sergeants, or corporals. Not everybody's going to become a general. So he's in the Navy. He'll be a private.
Yeah,
so that can happen sometimes.
So he gives the miles of learning Torah. It's really, I have a whole share. You know what? Maybe we'll leave it, and next week I'll give this share on the 6 miles of Torah and the 1 miler called bread and garments, the 1 miler of mitzvahs, which we spoke about. This is basically where this chapter ends up. We got through the chapter basically that through the mitzvahs maisius, which the paradigm of those mitzvahs is called tzedakah, you lift up the world to him, or he comes down into the lowest. That is the dir b'tachtonim. Okay, the Torah has got other milers. Yeah, learning has got other milers, but you have to remember that you can't get to mitzvah without Torah. So there is no mitzvah without Torah. But that's the point. Like what you said. What was your name again? Chaim. That you were saying that you know ali de lasos is lilmod ali de lasos. And it says there's 2 options in the Mishnah, yeah? Lilmod almanas lelamed, to learn so as to teach, which is the lower level, and lilmoid almanas lasos, which is the higher level. Where does it say lilmoid almanas lilmoid? To learn for the sake of learning. Well, yeah. So that was that. Yeah, that's where that came. That was a chiddush. So then you have to be careful. You have to research that. If you want to take that as sacrosanct from what your Rebbe tells you, then okay, fine. But you have to know that there's other schools of thought out there. Yiddishkeit is bigger than the yeshiva system, much bigger than the yeshiva system. And you have to be courageous, because it's very easy to just, when you've been told something, it's very easy to just go aha, and it's very scary to entertain something different to what the status quo is. It really is, especially if you live in the system. So anyway, we're not going to. I'm going to finish now.
I've heard this before. Is talking about Knei Kulam, the other things in that mission.
Yeah, but it's also more than that, because there are milers. Your devekas in the Rebbeinu Shalom is bigger in Talmud Torah than it is in doing the mitzvah. But he wants the mitzvah more than the. Okay, I'll give you a mashal and finish on this. Yeah. Let's say your father's still around. Yeah. Okay. Your dad has this thing with this certain dance that you do. When you do this dance, yeah, he just loves it, yeah? That's like his pleasure, watching you do a certain dance, okay. Yeah? Now, there's 2 things going on. There's the time when he puts his hand around your shoulder. What's your name, by the way?
Daniel.
What? Daniel. He puts his hand on your shoulder. He's like, Dan, listen. And he starts describing to you the dance. And you know when you begin, you do that thing when you run up and then you spin around and then you do the splits and then you jump up and down and then you do that thing with your arm, and and he's describing to you how he loves this dance and what he loves about the dance and stuff, yeah? You feel very close to him at that point, yeah? Very close. But what about now he goes up the room, yeah, and the video's running and you now start doing the dance for him to watch on the video later. Like, you don't see him there watching you, yeah? Or he's behind a one-way mirror, a two-way mirror kind of thing, yeah? That is an amazing moshel for the difference between Torah and mitzvahs. When you're learning Torah, if you're learning it with the right mindset, yeah, you will feel very close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You're hearing his words, you're hearing him speak to you, you're hearing what he wants from you, yeah? That's like analogous to your dad with his hand around you, talking to you about the dance that he wants. But he wants you to dance for him. So now, when you start dancing for him, I mean, I could be standing in front of you, in front of it. It's the same thing. I'm dancing. Where's my kesher to my dad? Yeah, especially if it's on a video and he's not here, he's going to see it later, whatever it is. Yeah, you have to really work in your mind to understand that. But really, it depends what your perspective is. If your perspective is you, then Talmud Torah is where it's at. If you've been able to step out of yourself into his perspective, then mitzvahs maisis is where it's at. But don't forget, you can't do mitzvahs maisis without Talmud Torah. There's no mitzvahs maisis without Talmud Torah.
That was the point of bittul that you were saying before.
Exactly.
Where you don't like to use that word.
That's where you've moved from, and this is the whole point of Tanya. We understand it. Tanya is in one line, or two lines. Tanya is the transformation from wanting to serve God to wanting God to be served. From moving from these eyes to these eyes. That's what Tanya's about. Stepping outside of yourself, and that's what the Lubavitch came as a movement. Mitzvahs Maisius. That was the Rebbe put his money where his mouth was. Okay, that's chapter Lamed Zayin, basically. Shkoyach.